Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Keep Fantasy Great podcast. Today, we got a special episode in store for you. We're going to go over Week 1 and the power rankings. We're going to dive into the waiver wire pickups, and then we're going to look at Week 2 and a little preview and the release of the schedule. We got a special guest joining us today. It's your league's very own Justin Bartis. Welcome in, Barty.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be the podcast, episode number 3. I'm really ready to dive into this fantastic but very interesting Week 1. We definitely got a lot to cover, so I'm excited to dive into it.
Without further ado, let's kind of jump into it. I released the power rankings yesterday. I know I went on my own, dropped them like I usually do. Anything you want to touch on with the power rankings, I'll set it up for us. We had number 10, Cactus, number 9. We had Shijin, 8, Steve, 7, Emmett, 6, G-Money, 5 was me, Barrera was 4, you were 3, Josh had 2, Drew had 1. Kind of went based off of teams, how they performed in Week 1, what I liked, what I didn't like.
Yeah, absolutely. And, kind of we touched on it a little bit before, but, really the way I like to look at the power rankings too, obviously I did them after the draft. That's for like a season-long type thing, the way I like to do them after the week too. Obviously, we do it a little bit of like recency bias with what we just saw. I know you put them out on Tuesdays after the week, but really what I like is looking at how complete a team is, looking at their strength, and again, kind of figuring it out, their chances toward winning at the end of the year. So really, I did have a few different changes, I did have the top 3 were the same, in the correct order. So I had Drew at 1, Josh at 2, myself at number 3. No real need to touch on that. I think you did a nice job touching on those.
Yeah.
Again, kind of like I said, like focusing on like the strength of teams and looking at them for like long term. I like you at 4, man. I know we played each other this week. You got a really good team. It was tough. We kind of talked about it a little bit in the pre-show too, like touchdowns. Like your team put up a ton of yards, right? A lot of ballers, a lot of focal points of their offenses, but just didn't find the end zone Week 1. That won't be the same every week, So I think that your team is going to be really good going forward. I have you at the 4 spot. At 5, I have Barrera, and at 6, I have Greg. So 2 guys that were really active in the waiver wire, addressing the teams of the needs of their teams.
Yeah.
And we'll see, like 2 guys that love to wheel and deal, man. And they got the pieces that they need to make a blockbuster deal, as well as the holes that are needed to fill before they're, in the top 3, 4 shoe-in, looking for a bye even come playoff time.
Yeah.
So I have them at 5 and 6. And this one is really gonna surprise some people.
Okay. Let's see it.
I have Kyle Cactus at number 7.
Okay.
So it's like
a big difference for us right there.
It sure is. Yeah. So I have him at number 7. And a lot of people might give me flack. They might say it's nepotism, whatever the criticism may be. But Week 1 could not have gone any worse for Kyle, right?
Yeah.
So he made an adjustment, right? He's going with Tua. We'll see if it's for the 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, maybe the month that Jerry Jones is saying. But for at least the next month, is Tua the guy? We'll see. I think it probably is, because is Baltimore really the matchup that you want to stream against? I don't think so. But in terms of getting his guy, spend a couple bucks on him so that nobody can pick him up before he wakes up. He's a late riser, so
I think he went with Tua to replicate another stack. I see he's got Tyreek Hill out there, and I think he wanted to stack it up again, rather than go for the maybe more expensive option in Carson Wentz. Surprising to say that. I didn't think I'd put those 2 words together. But I think
you could have went stacked.
He's got Terry. He could have double stacked it. Never mind. All right, yeah, you're right. He could have stacked that too. But I think he went with Tua for the stack, and Tua wasn't bad last week. I think he was serviceable enough.
Yeah, and completed 69% of his passes. They're in a great new offense now with Mike McDaniel, and they got weapons. Like they're so quick, get the ball out, get it in space, and with that running backs, like it was a tough matchup. Like Pats are a solid defense, and we'll see the Ravens. So 2 good tests, and then then you get the Jets sprinkled in there. Then you get a couple other teams sprinkled in there, that they can really do damage against. But then still have CMC. It was a week without Kittle, so he punted. Went with Gesicki, who was free, and for good reason, caught 1 ball for a yard.
Does he still have Gesicki on the roster? That's the question. Let me double check if he's triple stacking.
I don't think so.
Gesicki is back to being free. Anyone in this
Yep,
league
yep. Thursday morning, I'm
can pick
sure
them up
people
for
will be
nothing.
getting whoever didn't go crazy yesterday.
Yeah,
Will be waiting to spend their money on
save
him.
your money for Gesicki. He's out there right now.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's some tight end needy teams that we'll talk about in a little bit, but partly my fault. But yeah, Kyle at 7. I like that. We'll see. Tough matchup this week. Could start 0-2, but down like I said, complete season, right? We got a 14-week season.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I think that he'll be fighting. He'll be scratching and clawing for one of the bottom 2 spots.
Before I rebuttal on your rankings on my rankings, let's hear 8, 9, 10.
So 8, 9, and 10 in this order. I have Shijin. Although I was close to, I wrote these up like really early in the morning, so before waivers cleared. But I was close to switching Shijin, just like not as comfortable in the star pieces that he's got.
Mm-hmm.
With Derrick Henry, for example. But Shijin 8, Emmett 9, Steve 10. Who I got rounding at the bottom.
Okay. I mean, our top 6. Pretty much the same. I mentioned on my power ranking reveal that I had myself at 4 originally, and I swapped myself down. Just little respect. Didn't want to throw myself too high. Got to be fair about it. But yeah, no, I completely agree with your top 6 at least. We nailed them on the head. I think you, Drew, and Josh all dominated week 1. You guys had great performances all around. Nothing. There's not much to talk about when you're doing things a little too well. Barrera and Greg and me right in that 4, 5, 6, which I like a lot. And then, so our bottom 4 is where we have the same bottom 4, but we kind of move things around a little bit. You have Cactus at 7, and I know you touched on how you like his team. I'm going to talk about a little bit why I put him at 10 as opposed to keeping him high up in 7, I guess you could say. For me, it really came down to his receiving core. And though it may be, it's not too weak, I'm not in love with it. He's got CeeDee Lamb and he's got Terry McLaurin, 2 guys I owned last year. And I know the struggles that it takes to have them. Neither one of them performed their ADP last year, and then both CeeDee Lamb and Terry McLaurin were kind of Terry McLaurin in that same range he was drafted in last year, and then CeeDee Lamb gets a 2-round bump. I'm not in love with them, and after the performance on Sunday night, I'm very out on CeeDee Lamb for the rest of the year. I don't know if he'll be able to perform like a wide receiver 1, and he's going to get wide receiver 1 matchups and looks at from the defensive side where you're going to get the top cornerback matchups. You're going to get double teamed because your next receiver is Noah Brown. So with Cooper Rush throwing the ball, I'm not in love with that. And it took Terry McLaurin a 40-yard touchdown, 50-yard touchdown to be fantasy relevant. In a day where Carson Wentz threw for 4 touchdowns, you're not going to get that every week from Carson Wentz. It's kind of scary to look at. And then DK Metcalf with Geno Smith, 7 for 36. Nothing special to write home about. I do think Tyreek Hill will perform, but that's kind of why I threw him in that spot, and a very big question mark with Elijah Mitchell out at the running back 2 spot without the depth to kind of perform. It's going to be a battle, but I didn't see it moving forward as being a positive outlook for Cactus here. That's why kind of why.
I agree. On those points, definitely makes sense. I see those points too, and yeah, like I said, we'll see. That RB2 spot definitely dreadful, and like that loss to Dak is it's detrimental to everybody. Like nobody can feel as confident as they were before.
Yeah.
Cooper Rush I think is somewhat capable. Like I don't think it's a complete now you're with Nick Mullins type, but I think now he can come in and be efficient enough to maybe keep him on the wide receiver 2 borderline. But I think Zeke takes a big hit. The running game in general, they're without Tyron Smith for who knows how long if he even comes back this year. It'll be tough uphill battle.
Another point in the power rankings I want to touch on. You had Emmett at 9. I had him at 7. Not a fan of the Young Bucks. Why'd you kind of drop him down to 9? I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so we know Emmett. He's staying loyal to the cause, drafting all the rookies, right? But with one of them, I guess he's a rookie, even though he didn't play last year, Travis Etienne. That Jacksonville situation between the running backs is really scary, and with the way that they were splitting snaps 55-45 in favor of Robinson, and just the usage, Robinson got so many more touches. Etienne's route participation really wasn't where we needed it to be to feel really comfortable with him. And, you parlay that with Cam Akers putting up a literal goose egg in week 1. I mean, and that was just so surprising. I mean, we didn't hear any kind of limitations before the Thursday night game about Cam Akers. He was talking to the media the day before. I'm excited to let everybody see what I feel like on Thursday.
Yeah.
Came out with 3 yardless carries, and that was it. When you missed a big blitz pickup, so I mean the running back situation definitely scary. And then you talk about Najee too, and Najee didn't do terrible in week 1 in a pretty good matchup, but he got injured. Left the game, and he coming in. You heard about the Lisfranc injury that he dealt with during training camp. And this is a guy that logged the most touches in NFL the year before.
Yeah.
So injury and durability, definitely a question. And we know how important running backs are. So definitely something to monitor there. What I do love for him is Jamar Chase. Obviously a baller. Lamar Jackson's going to have a big-time year. We talked about it in the group chat, but an Aaron Judge-esque season, perhaps. And,
Could be.
Great start against the Jets. And that wasn't even with a lot of rushing. I mean, I don't think that he went anywhere near his rushing ceiling. So if he hits that, with the weapons that he has, dangerous, really dangerous.
It felt like Lamar Jackson played that game on cruise control. Like he didn't need to be special to win. He just kind of needed to just go out there. I think he played that game on cruise control. Now, a rebuttal question. Do you think there's a chance that Etienne and Robinson are both playable in this lineup?
Yeah, and then he's rolling it out this week. I mean, at least early in the week,
I'm looking
we see
at
it in the lineup.
Now, but Etienne was a drop ball away from a touchdown reception. I mean, he only ended up with 8, but that's an extra 6 that gets you 14. Robinson already had 18. I mean, there's a chance. I know it's weird to say because it's Jacksonville and it's 2 running backs on Jacksonville. I don't think you want to own both those or play both those, but they're going to be trailing, and they're going to need to come back. And those 2 kind of seem like your 2 and 3 kind of target guys and your usage guys. I mean, Trevor Lawrence looked like he loved Christian Kirk, which was kind of shown in week 1. And based on the money that they paid him, they're going to use Christian Kirk. But I feel like there's a small chance that as the season goes on and Etienne gets to play more, he's going to do most of the receiving work. And Robinson's going to handle the carries. And there's a chance they're both usable.
I 100% agree. Yeah, and it's interesting because what I really want to compare the situation to, and it sounds kind of crazy, with what I'm about to say, but it really is similar to the Green Bay offense and how I view it right now.
I was
with the 2022 outlook.
Right?
I mean, their best 2 offensive players, you would imagine. I mean, depends how you rank Christian Kirk, but their best 2 skill players are their running backs.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of similar in how you view like Robinson and Dillon and more of like a run downhill type of guy, and they're between the tackles, whereas Aaron Jones and Etienne's strengths are in the receiving game.
Yeah.
So really, like Aaron Rodgers even talked about it on the Pat McAfee podcast. We got to get 28 and 33 the ball.
Yeah.
Like we got to get them the ball. I 100% agree with you. And with not really much in the wide receiver room or the tight end room, it can definitely flow through them. It also depends on Trevor Lawrence's progression as a quarterback and even thrower. But they're in a weak division with a lot of positive matchups, and they can definitely get after it. And yeah, I think that's a great point. So yeah, maybe I'm a little skeptical, early on, but like we said, it's week one power rankings. So
no need to overreact. I think our rankings were close enough where it's like, all right, we agree on things. I think there's some upside on this team, and that's why I kind of threw it there. There's some positive outlook moving forward. And there always is whenever you have young guys on your team, that there's potential for a boom like season for any of these guys. You could see the path for it at least. Whether it happens or not, that's going to be either the make or break for Emmett this year. I love that you mentioned the Packers. That's exactly what I was thinking. It's like the great value Packers offense, and maybe not even great value, like Kirkland brand or something. But I like his starting lineup. Looking at his bench pieces worries me. Devontae Smith, 0 for 0. Cam Akers, 3 for 0. Especially when you spend up on a Cam Akers like that, it's not something you want to see in week 2. That he's already a possible drop candidate. But No,
Yeah, I wouldn't drop Cam Akers
I
yet,
wouldn't
but
either.
it's like
But how many
definitely is
weeks?
concerning.
How many weeks of that before you drop him?
Yeah, and this week he could get his too against Atlanta.
He could. We'll
Poor
see. I
run
think
defense.
there's some injuries still looming there, which is why you don't see him. Because in the playoffs last year, it was all Cam Akers. They used the hell out of Cam Akers. So to see him go 3 for 0 makes me feel like maybe he's not quite 100% yet, and they're kind of waiting it out. Especially coming from a Darrell Henderson owner and myself, I don't fully trust that. Darrell didn't look It's not like Darrell looked like James Robinson. I would have more confidence. James Robinson ran the ball well. Darrell Henderson did not look good in his snaps. He mustered 12,
nothing really special to command a snap share that he had.
So to me, it feels like it's gonna start leveling itself out and be 50 because Darrell's not. It doesn't look special when he's running. It's not like a Melvin Gordon Javonte thing again, where Javonte just looks so much better than Melvin Gordon every time they touch the ball. Even though Melvin Gordon gets his and kind of gets a lot of carries. I think he was 12 for 58 Monday night. But there's, Cam Akers is the more special back when you break it down. And I think he'll eventually work into that role. But we don't need to spend the whole podcast talking about Emmett's team. I'm sure he'll love this little segment that we came up with. Anything you want to touch on with any more teams before looking at the waiver wires?
We'll start with Josh. It's the RB2 spot. Is he going to be making the right decisions? Is he going to be getting that kind of consistent production from A.J. Dillon, from a Miles Sanders? Can we expect him to get 100 and a touchdown every week? Probably not. It was a great matchup. But, that might have earned the trust, might have earned some touches. With me, my RB2 spot, even my wide receiver, second flex spot, we'll see how that looks like with Mooney. I mean, I know you said in the power rankings, even like with your tight end spot, we're willing to cut everything from that game, given the conditions. I don't even know why they played in those kind of conditions.
Those conditions
to be honest,
were so bad that every time I was looking at it on Red Zone, I was like, Jesus Christ, they're just running through puddles of water. It was like an inch or two of water just on the ground that they had to run through every time. It's hard for me to take that game and then start criticizing the fantasy output because no one did well in that game. Not a single player looked good.
No.
Like Debo wasn't even good and he had a touchdown.
Yeah, and now where's San Fran gonna go? They're gonna go back home to like an 80-degree afternoon and beat up on the Seahawks. Most likely 10-point favorites as of right now, and expect a heavy dose of Trey Lance and Debo in that game.
Yeah.
And we'll see if Kittle is there or not. And Ayuk pretty quiet too, so we'll see if he gets involved.
Yeah. We'll touch on Ayuk in the waiver wire segment because there was something interesting that happened this week. But bouncing back to Josh's team and the question marks with the running backs and the tight ends, I think running back 2 always seems to be everyone's question mark. I feel pretty comfortable in mine, and there are a few teams that also might feel comfortable with their 2 running backs that they have out there. But the tight end position this week, and I touched on it in the power rankings, you're the only one that didn't have a problem. No one's tight ends looked good. I mean, Ertz put up like 10, and it's only because he had a touchdown. But outside of Kelsey, and even Andrews, possibly a little concerning, but I wouldn't be worried. Like I said, the Ravens were on cruise control. But no one's tight end put on output. I mean, mine was historically bad, but no one else is really, no tight ends look good in week 1. Kelsey had the 30 bomb or 20 something, whatever he had. I don't even want to know. But other than that, I mean, you're the only one that didn't have a tight end problem, and that's what you'd hope when you spend your second and third round picks on tight ends, that you're not going to have a problem the whole year. And that's also why I think your team, like why I had you at 3, is you have the quarterback 1, you have the running back 1, you have the tight end 1 and tight end 2. You're going to take a hit at wide receiver, like just based off the 4 names I just listed. You're not going to have the strongest wide receiver room in the league. It's not going to. It's impossible. With the draft capital you spent on the other places, that's where you take your hit. And if you can get that season from Amon-Ra that you saw in week 1 and that you saw at the end of last year, if you can get some more production from Darnell Mooney, I'd like to say this week 2 game for the Bears and Niners is really the week 1 game, based on what we just saw. But no, I think tight end's a question everywhere, and I think running back 2 is also a question everywhere. You mentioned it on even your own team.
Yep, absolutely. Barrera, every starter. We talked about Barrera's running back, so let's give Barrera some credit. In a week 1 W, wasn't necessarily pretty, given the dud by Aaron Rodgers, and worth noting now, getting into waivers soon, Aaron Rodgers dropped. So Aaron Rodgers, who was the back-to-back MVP, is now a free agent.
I think he'll be better, obviously. You can't be much worse than what he was. I think he'll figure it out. I mean, he was a drop from Christian Watson away from, what, a 70-yard touchdown. That's another, 9 points that he missed out on. But I think he'll figure it out. Obviously, it's Aaron Rodgers. Do I think he'll be super fantasy? No, I think he'll be more of a plug-and-play guy on his matchups. I don't see that 300-yard performance with 4 touchdowns. I mean, it's Aaron Rodgers, so I don't want to put it past him. But the weapons on this team, and I've been a Packer hater to start the year. I'm very down on them, and I'm in love with the Vikings in that division. And I love what happened in Week 1 because it kind of proved what I had. I have my Vikings division winner bets locked and loaded, and I love what I saw in Week 1. But in a fantasy output, I don't know how valuable Rodgers will really be this year.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a valid concern, absolutely.
Touching back on Burrow's teams, love his running backs, and I think if you can get that output from Cooks and Davis every week, you got a contender here, because that's his biggest concern is that wide receiver room, which is really thin, and also no real wide receiver one, but the running back pieces, and you know how Burrow likes to deal. There's definitely a wide receiver one inbound to the promised land.
Yeah, and it's that too. I mean, honestly, like you're talking about with that potential, with if those wide receivers are hitting, which you gave Davis the number 2 in that offense, but with how efficient he's been on touchdowns, I mean, it's crazy, man. And with Cooks being the clear number 1 in Houston, and it really will come down to the tight end play, which he's got a capable one, Dalton Schultz, and the quarterback play. And he waits and waits and waits, and we'll see. Like, is walk it to him. I think he coined that phrase for him. Is walk it to him going to be that guy for him? Or, like he's got Kirk, who's also capable, and we like that offense this year. But we'll see. I mean, that's what it's going to come down to. And, especially with how they split that backfield in Denver. Kind of concerning. First chops in the red zone went to Melvin before they both ended up coughing it up inside the 5.
I can't see – watching that game, I can't see how you don't use Javonte more. Javonte did take the load of receiving. He led all running backs week 1 in both receptions and targets.
He had 11 catches, right?
Yeah. But just watching Javonte run, he just looks so much more special than Melvin Gordon. Like, Melvin Gordon runs, and Melvin Gordon doesn't run bad. 12 for 58 is not bad. It's just when Javonte has the ball, he can break one. When Melvin has the ball, you're like, 5 yards.
He's always among the league leaders in broken tackles too in the NFL, and when he was in college too, it was the same thing.
Right. One more team I kind of definitely want to touch on is I kind of want to talk about our reigning champ, our G Money Mags team over here. What'd you think about that week 1 kind of performance? I think it was a floor performance from everyone. I think he rounded out at 106, 107. What do you make of what he's put together so far this year?
Yeah, things didn't work out in week 1 for G Money, and it's the championship hangover. Can this be the start of the downfall? We'll see. But no, it's Jalen Hurts is really encouraging in the usage, 90 yards rushing and the score. I mean, like we talked about, like AJ Brown probably could have had 2 touchdowns as well in that game. So you factor that in, and you said like 4 different rushing touchdowns in the game. And, you got to consider, like, he's a vulture. So he's going to get the running back room is great with Eckler and James Conner. Mm-hmm. Like, both of their snap usage, rates and all that through the roof. So feel really good about them. It's just like, we'll see. I mean, at the flex spots, like Juju looks pretty promising. Renfro quiet. Waller didn't really have anything special of a game. And, maybe it was because of the 39% target share that Devontae had. And, Derek Carr, they got that shower narrative back in Fresno State. So we'll see. We'll see if that's going to have an impact. But, I mean, I think he's got some solid bench spots. Like, he added a couple of guys. So, yeah, we'll definitely see. But that's why I have him, like I said, at number 6 in my power rankings.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would put him into the playoffs as of right now.
That squeaks in.
But, unluckily for him, he's got 13 more weeks to try to prove that. And, with a 6 straight seasons of the champion missing the playoffs,
Yeah.
things not good after an 0-1 start.
What's the shower narrative? Did they used to take showers?
So the shower narrative is when you're back and these guys have played together at Fresno State.
Yeah.
So yeah, showering, the teammates in the same locker room, like Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp have the breakfast narrative.
Yeah,
Eat breakfast together all the time.
If you're
Yeah,
if you're a
the
wide
former
receiver,
team.
you want to go to breakfast with your quarterbacks. That works out really well. I need A-Rob to join in on something.
Yeah, Allen Robinson missed that one though. He had to eat on the go.
Yeah, little pack of granola bar. Now bouncing back to Greg's team though, I was a little concerned as a Devontae owner coming in just because of how much Derek Carr targeted Hunter Renfrow last year, and after week 1, I am no longer concerned with the usage that Devontae got. But it's concerning having, first of all, just having 2 pass catchers on the same team. There's only one ball. You can't get it to both guys at once. So it's always concerning owning just 2 guys on the same team because playing them, you have to hope for a high volume in passing, and Derek Carr never has been that. He doesn't really hit that 30 touchdown mark. He doesn't really hit that 4,000 yard mark or 4,500, and what you want out of your quarterbacks when you have, their top targets. But after watching it, it's all Devontae from week 1, and it's going to be tough owning the number 2 and number 3 options on an already, they're not a prolific passing offense. It's Derek Carr. Like, he can get the job done, but he can't get the job done to 3 people. So I worry a little bit that Renfrow and Waller will have their games where Devontae will kind of be on the back burner. But after what I saw last week, it might just be all Devontae all year.
Yeah, and I even forgot the one guy too. I mean, Debo's exposure is going to go through the roof now too. I mean, he might go full-time running back for the next 2 months. We don't know, and it's a Kyle Shanahan offense. We don't know what's going to happen.
I think that might be the perfect transition into waiver wire if you're ready, because I'd love to talk on the number 1 option from the waiver wire pickups this week, and it kind of flows in with Debo right there.
I don't know if you were as surprised as me opening up the offers report this morning and looking. I mean, Jeff Wilson, right? Who everybody in the fantasy landscape, number 1 target. He's presumed he's had it when Eli Mitchell was out last year as well, led the backfield, but $35, right? So we have a $100 budget for those who aren't familiar with our league to spend on free agents, and they process Wednesday morning as part of the waivers. $35, Chris Barrera, who has, we talked about the abundance of running backs, and he's content with leaving them on the bench. You can only start 4 of them.
Yeah, you can only start 4, but he's got 17. He'll make sure.
Yep.
If he could just start all running backs, I think he would.
Yeah. Forget the wide receivers. Give him the option. Put that wide receiver running back. But $35 to Barrera. Yeah. What was interesting, right? I mean, he was claiming in the group chat the last 2 days, I'm getting him. I dropped out of the running last night. The betting was going to get intense. It's week 1. I've made a poor week 1 decision in the past, but no other offers for Jeff Wilson.
I thought that was surprising, especially with the running backs that went down this week, and you talk about how a lot of teams are missing that running back too. I expected a lot more teams to kind of be involved, and there's some teams that needed flex play, and you saw the other pickups this week in the waiver wire where everyone kind of grabbed, their running backs, their wide receivers. But I'm surprised no one else put not even a bid. We're looking at the offers report. There's not a single bid on Jeff Wilson outside of Barrera. And I could touch on why I didn't bid on him and why you dropped out last night. I mean, for me, first of all, I have no one that I want to drop. That's my problem. But outside of that, just from if I did have someone to drop, I wasn't interested in Jeff Wilson, and it's because of Deebo Samuel. I think I had Jeff Wilson. I held on to him for a little bit last year, just in case when Elijah Mitchell kept going up and down. But Jeff Wilson was not really playable when Elijah Mitchell went down. Like, Deebo had 8 carries last game, and Trey Lance even had 13. Like, Jeff Wilson.
He's the RB1.
Like, they have 2 other guys that also run the ball. It's a wide receiver and it's a quarterback. Yes, they'll get it to Jeff Wilson. He had 9 carries last week, but he didn't do anything. And Again, the conditions weren't the best, but I don't see a world where Jeff Wilson, he's not going to be a 3-down back, and he's not even. I would be surprised if he led the team in carries at any point when he's the starter.
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% right. And just real quick, one little touch on Trey Lance.
Yeah.
He's not starting for any team in our league right now.
Yeah.
But it's crazy with what he's on pace for. I think the only one that have eclipsed, I think it was like 180 total carries in a season.
Yeah.
I saw in a tweet was Lamar Jackson, and he's on pace for nearly like 200 carries or something like that. Like, it's going to be crazy to see if he's going to be able to do that. And with these running quarterbacks, like we talked about with Jalen Hurts and with Lamar, that's where their ceiling is going to come from that, and that's where we've seen that in the past. I mean, it's kind of crazy with Burrow this week. I know you touched on the power rankings, but 5 turnovers still put up a 26-point day.
Yeah, I mean,
so that's the one rare example. But I mean, these guys can they can afford to turn the ball over once or twice, and and they're rushing for 50+ yards. They can make it back as long as they're efficient throwing the ball and scoring touchdowns.
Here's the beauty of the interception for fantasy football perspective. If I'm a quarterback and I throw an interception, that means the other team has the ball. If they score, they score. But that just means I have to throw more, because now we're down and we got to get back into the game and we got to do it quickly. So from a fantasy perspective, your interceptions are not the worst thing in the world when you have the quarterbacks, when you have the wide receivers, just because they got to throw more now, and they're going to. So you saw that with Burrow. He had 5 turnovers and then still put up a 20-point game because they were continuously down and they had to keep coming back into the game and they had to keep throwing. But yeah, these running quarterbacks are good, but it's tough owning the running backs on the running quarterback teams because the quarterbacks become your number one rusher. And even when they're passing, I mean, we saw Jalen Hurts hyper target A.J. Brown, which I love. But they're like, their first option is almost look to run. Like, yes, they'll go through like one read, and you saw it with Jalen Hurts. He didn't target he targeted Devontae Smith 4 times, 0 catches. His first target was like A.J. Brown and then run. And you'll see that with these running quarterbacks where they have their one guy that they're going to look at, and then their second option isn't check down or, who's my second option? It's let's use my legs, let's get out of here, let's get some yards. And that's where it's tough when you own a few guys. And I don't see the production for Jeff Wilson. That's why I backed out last night, just because I think they got Debo, Kittle's coming back, and Trey Lance wants to run.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we'll go down the list. I mean, next, we kind of we skipped on the guy, the top prize, right? Because all the buzz was around Jeff Wilson. We had to start with that, but yeah, if you want to touch on, go ahead and touch on the top prize of the week.
Yeah, so the number one or the most expensive guy this week was Shijin, who we'll get into spending almost his entire budget. $41 on Curtis Samuel. Next highest was Barrera at 20, Josh at 13, and Kyle trying to pick him up for $5. So a couple guys interested in Curtis Samuel. I'm surprised 41 because he could have got Jeff Wilson. I mean, I do like Curtis Samuel though. He got some big time usage in week 1 from Carson Wentz, and he was, I think, their number one target. I think he had 11 of them. They paid the money for him.
7 catches.
Yeah, he had the touchdown. They paid the money for him last year. He was just injured. I actually think Curtis Samuel could probably be, like, if we look at this list in 8 weeks, he might be the only one that's still on a roster.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point too. And the one that I think that could be there with him is possibly Carson Wentz's quarterback. We'll see. It was the Lions, right? We got to take it one game at a time. But, possibly Carson Wentz, and then maybe Robbie Anderson, right? Because it is Baker in that offense. We know Baker can throw the deep ball at times. Mm-hmm. And Robbie Anderson has shown in the past he's finished top 20 wide receiver twice in the past. So it's definitely in the range of outcomes. But, no, I think you're 100% right. That Samuel usage was fantastic. He even got 4 carries. Yeah. And you're right, like 7 catches, 11 targets, and a touchdown. He's earning that trust quickly of a new quarterback, and he can definitely be a good piece. And Shijin needed flex spots filled, and he went after him. Props to him. He got Duvernay for $24, so $65, and that's more than half of your budget. that you committed to filling those holes.
Duvernay
And,
came in,
he went out and got after it and did it.
Duvernay came in third at 24. Not a single other bid on him, and it always, I feel like, stings a little bit when you're picking someone up and you put a higher price and then you turn around and look and not a single other person put any money down. I mean, you got to go after your guys for sure. I think people are overspending a little bit in week one. You could see that they could have gotten them for a little bit cheaper. But again, not a worry. He needed the flex play. And looking at Shijin's team, I mean, he abandons the running back position because he only has 2 of them on his roster, and apparently he loves these wide receivers. But he needed the plug and play guys, and those are 2 guys I feel like you could kind of throw in right away almost.
Yeah, maybe we could chalk it up to football being back. Everyone's excited. Yeah. A little overreaction Wednesday. 8 months without fantasy football, but like you said, you got to sometimes pay up and get your guys, and that's what they did. I mean, I think it's interesting. We talked about Robbie Anderson a little bit too. To segue into him, he was right after Devin Duvernay, $21 to Greg. Mm-hmm. So Greg getting after it, spending that money, and worth noting, Shijin next highest bid, $17. So had he landed him,
he was prepared to. Only
right. I mean, had he landed him, that's 50% of your budget gone.
Just week one
for the year.
On 3 wide receivers too. Keep in mind, and he already has like 8 of them.
So. Yeah, no, but props to Shijin, right? I mean, we don't know how it's going to work out, so props to him for being bold. I kind of hope it does work out for him. You'd hate to see that work out. Like I said, as a joke, I'd hate to buy T. Higgins off him for the rest of my budget, but, should have come down to that Shij in my line. We'll see. I'm always available.
Yeah. I don't know if this is a trade segment. I think we're talking about the waiver wires, but little off topic there. I'm trying to get Shijin to trade. Do you actually think Shijin listens to this, first of all?
I mean, how do you not, man? All this content and this you can even put on your car ride to work in the morning. That's where I like to listen to it. So, I mean, why not? You got to give, I don't know how long this is going to end up being, but, maybe like 30, 40 minutes. That's not too bad. Eat over your lunch break. Do something like that.
I'll be surprised if Shijin tunes in, and we'll know if he tuned in because we're talking about him for 5 minutes. So, after Robbie, back to Robbie Anderson. I don't know. He had one deep ball, which he's capable of, but if he doesn't get the deep ball, I feel like he's not going to be fantasy relevant. And I expect DJ Moore to pick it up, and I expect Christian McCaffrey to get more carries. I think Baker looked a little ruffled. His feathers were a little ruffled in that game. He didn't look comfortable at all. He was constantly pressured. His throws were quick and not good. I expect him to do a little bit better moving forward once he gets a little bit more comfortable in the offense. And I expect more targets for Christian McCaffrey. I don't think Christian McCaffrey hit his ceiling at all in week one. And I think he's going to hyper-target him, and I can see more going to DJ Moore. And I think the Robbie Anderson was a one-off game. That's just how I look at it. But certainly he's always been a deep ball threat. And when you're a deep ball threat, if it comes, you're looking good in fantasy. But if it doesn't, 3 for 20 or something stupid like that, not going to cut it.
Yep, for almost a quarter of your budget. Might not. It might end up burning somebody.
Well, next was Greg again. Rex Burkhead at $15. I mean, it's Rex Burkhead. I'm not excited about that. You have Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce was fantasy's number 1 player coming into the regular season with all the hype he got in the preseason. Did not show up in week 1 and didn't really get the usage that you thought he would get coming in. I mean, you're the Dameon Pierce owner. I know you probably thought about even starting him in week 1.
Yeah, no, definitely a little scary, in week 1. And, even Lovie Smith talking about it was like really confusing after the game, right? I mean, the Texans, you figure, need to throw the ball. They have a terrible defense. Davis Mills is underrated. I think that the whole offense in itself is underrated, but, they're going to have to throw. And surprisingly, they were up, I think, 20-3 in that game. And you would think that, if this is your guy, and if he's, he probably needs to work on his receiving game, unless you're like a true pass catcher out of college, which he was sufficient in at Florida. But, they were winning 20-3. You would think that this is, give it to your guy. It was a stingy defense in the Colts. But that was, I mean, if there's any time to showcase, your guy, your RB1, it would be in a game that you're up 17 in a division game. But, it wasn't the case. Rex Burkhead was staying out. The third down back was taking first, second down carries and even the red zone. So definitely, a little worrisome to me. And, even Lovey said we're going to go out and we're going to try to design more plays for him, get him the ball. He's on my bench. I got a little bit lucky with Kenneth Walker being out. We don't want to wish injury on anybody, but that kind of, gave me the security to put Rashad Penny in. He looked fine. But, my RB2 spot will look. And now with Ty Montgomery out, could be Ramondre Stevens season, full effect.
It could be, but nothing about a Rex Burkhead pickup excites me. Do I think he has a high floor? Maybe. Like, will he bat?
Medium.
He's gonna get you 8, but do I think he's gonna go for 15, 20 points? No, I think he's gonna do exactly what his projections are, which I guess is fine if you have some upside elsewhere. I don't know.
Which Greg does. Those running backs and Debo.
He's gonna go 10 for 40 every game. He doesn't look special. He doesn't look good running the ball. I think eventually Dameon Pierce will work him out. But for now, he has the starting running back of the Houston Texans. You go down the list after that. The next pickup is Sterling Shepard at $10. There's not much to talk about. First of all, going back, Josh drafted Sterling Shepard, dropped him, and then spent $10 to get him back. You could have spent nothing to get him back, first of all. And second of all, you drafted him. If you wanted him, why didn't you hold on to him? Little confused.
It's always that post-draft clarity, though. There's some guy that you hear some news about him, and you get rid of it. I do it all the time. I did it with George Kittle. In his rookie year, I had George Kittle, drafted him. And then didn't even start him week 1. Dropped him. Greg scooped him up. Rest is history.
It happens.
But, I can't really blame him. And, he's got the Giants ties. And that offense looks like it can work. Like the Brian Daboll effect is going to be real, I think. And, I've always thought the Giants have a talented enough core. Mm-hmm. And, the offensive line improvements, they can do that. They can really show that sign of improvement with the coach. With the improved offensive line in a division where the defenses are really nothing like, too crazy.
Yeah. I still wouldn't want a wide receiver here. I think it's going to be spread out a little bit. I do think Shepard is the most consistent one of the bunch, but I think that ball is going to be spread out all over the place to who knows, God knows who. I mean, Richie James had 5 catches or 4 catches or something, and I didn't even know they brought him in as a wide receiver. I thought he was just going to be the kick return guy that he was in San Fran. But I like Saquon Barkley in that offense. I don't love anyone else. We'll see. Shepard had the big touchdown, but that was one of his 2 catches. So, not great.
Yeah, one last piece on the Giants, too. It's worth noting, too. I mean, Wandale got hurt after his first touch.
Yeah.
And Kadarius Toney, for some reason, we probably think he's the most talented receiver they have.
Oh, definitely.
Played 7 snaps and looked fine. Really looked elusive.
He looked really good.
He didn't even have a carry for like 27 yards.
I will say, even though he didn't play snaps, when he did, he got the ball.
Yep.
There's something else obviously going on, whether it's still injury related or whether it's coaching related. You do have to remember he didn't play the entire preseason. He didn't play in training camps. Like, he was kind of out for majority of the offseason, the preseason. I think there's a chance he's maybe just learning the playbook still and getting comfortable out there with this new offense and this new regime. I expect, based on what I saw in his limited offensive work, I think that he's by far one of the best skill possession players on this team outside of Saquon Barkley. I think he's number 2, and I think he'll work himself back into more carries. Whoever owns him, I don't remember who. I think it's Shijin. Shijin owns him. I would hold on to Kadarius Toney. I'm not dropping him just yet. Bouncing on next was Carson Wentz, also $10. Burr needed his quarterback. I think it's a fine play. Jalen Hurts just tore up the Lions. Carson Wentz goes and plays them in Detroit. I think he'll be a fine play this week. He's been a kind of fantasy relevant guy. I mean, outside of last year where he was awful, but when he was back in Philly, he's always kind of been a plug and play guy. And I think he could kind of do that again.
Yeah, no, I don't really hate it. $10 is, again, that's a fair amount of money to throw at a quarterback, but I mean, if you need that and you got to fill that position, go get it. And I can kind of see why he did that too, because obviously with Kyle losing Prescott, he could have seen Kyle getting a little more aggressive too. So,
Yeah.
if he had to get his guy, I don't hate the $10 bid. And, I'm not necessarily a big believer in Carson Wentz, but I think that offense definitely has enough talent. I mean, even with Jahan Dotson catching 2 touchdown passes, like with the running back core that they have, with the wide receivers that they have, and even Logan Thomas getting right back in and playing a good amount of snaps and running routes, I think this offense, has decent potential.
Yeah, I think one thing that's important to do, and you just noted it, is if outside of the running back and wide receiver position, because anyone will pick those guys up, if you're picking up a QB, if you're picking up a tight end on waivers, take a little look around the league, see what other teams have at their quarterback position, at their tight end position, because it's going to be a good lesson for you when you're putting in that money. Does someone else need a quarterback? Does someone else need a tight end? If not, you could probably get your guy pretty cheap because normally no one's trying to pick up a little straggler to sit on their bench. But if someone needs a starter at the quarterback or tight end position, look around the league, look at every team, see what they need. If someone else needs them, you probably will have to spend up a little bit. And I don't mind what Burr did, even though there wasn't another bid there. It seemed like he needs a quarterback, obviously, but apparently Carson Wentz wasn't on his mind. We'll get to that, I guess, now, because he's the last waiver wire acquisition, and that was $2, which is fine. He got his guy for $2.
$2 two of Tuesdays.
Nice. Looking at I wanted to touch a little bit on the players dropped. I know you mentioned Aaron Rodgers already. Another interesting drop candidate I thought was Brandon Ayuk. Outside of that, no one else, but Brandon Ayuk is now available, which is interesting, I'd say, because he was 2 for 40. It's not like he had no catches and no targets. Do I think he's amazing? No, I had him last year, and I hated owning him. Do I recommend picking him up? Maybe not. But 2 for 40 is interesting. In a rain game, with Debo, this is why it's interesting. With Elijah Mitchell out, and Debo probably set to take a lot more carries, I feel like there's a world where Brandon Ayuk picks up targets.
Yeah, no, 100%. And he's, if Debo, like you said, is going to slot into that running back role, absolutely. And it's just like it's kind of like a bet on talent type thing where it also depends on George Kittle, of course. Is he going to get back? Is he going to get healthy? Because he's going to get his when he comes back. But
right.
Brandon Ayuk is explosive. I mean, down the stretch last year, I think after he was banged up and when he got really involved, I think he was top 15 in terms of PPR receivers, if not top 15, top 20. And that was, of course, with Jimmy Garoppolo, a little bit more of a pocket passing quarterback. But if he develops rapport with Trey Lance, I think the ceiling, is very high for him. He can really get aggressive, and it's a guy that's super talented in a Kyle Shanahan offense, and we can definitely see him get utilized many different ways to find production.
And with
I would be very surprised if he gets to Sunday and he's not on a new team.
I would be surprised if he goes unclaimed. At the very least, I think he's going to earn himself a $0, and someone might even spend up a little bit to get him. There's a lot of teams that need some flex play. Would I start him this week? Probably not. I'd wait and see. But, I mean, there's always a chance with a guy like that where he could perform. Barrera actually is the one that dropped him, so he's betting on Jeff Wilson over Brandon Ayuk, which doesn't surprise me because he needs more running backs. Obviously, he's pretty weak in that regard. But another couple $0 pickups here. Burr adds Josh Palmer. You add Khalil Herbert and drop Nyheim Hines. Kyle's picking up DJ Chark. And Burr dropped Josh Palmer and picked up Mark Ingram. So
yeah, I was gonna touch on that. It happened in the last 30 minutes. If you saw that or not,
I am seeing that now. Yeah, so within 6 hours, Burr not a fan of Josh Palmer and already going to more running backs. But we'll bounce to you because I didn't make any transactions this week. I laid off the market. No one a couple people caught my eye, but no one that I wanted to drop. You're picking up Khalil Herbert and dropping your own handcuff in Nyheim Hines. Any reason?
Yeah, so this is really tough too. I mean, I'm in a similar position to you in terms of not really having anybody that I want to drop. I mean, I don't really have a spectacular bench. It's pretty deep, I like to think, and it's in a lot of backfields, it's one injury away type thing from being a substantial like top 15, like a potential RB1.
Yeah.
So really, yeah. So with that, I mean, Khalil Herbert, like he showed last year when Montgomery missed time that this guy can ball. I mean, and he had, I think it was 9 carries in week 1 for like 40 yards, and he scored a touchdown. He got the red zone and the long down and distance work for the Bears, and that was in the rain game. So he scored a touchdown for them, and like we said, he's had a history. He ran for 100 yards against the Bucs last year. The only guy that can do that. Like the man can play, and again, it's another kind of like I'm the handcuff king.
Yeah.
And dropping Hines, he's not exactly a handcuff to Taylor because he won't run between the tackles, but his usage would obviously go up if something happens to Taylor. But no, I like the upside of Herbert, and like I said, I mean, he looks like he has standalone value as of right now. Yeah. And if something was to happen to Montgomery, and it's it is a new coaching staff, a new front office, something can happen here where it's just a quick change of pace. If they get down, they lose a few games, can turn to him as the lead back.
Yeah, no, definitely. 9 for 45 and a touchdown. So that's pretty solid. He looked good out there. I did like the way Montgomery was running as well, even though he didn't find the end zone. I think Montgomery looked pretty good. But 9 for 45 and a tutty. Can't complain with that. We got
limited passing game usage too, which we don't like. That's not really what we're looking for, but
it's tough to judge.
If he's scoring touchdowns and he's racking up the yardage, I mean, as a second flex play or RB2, I can live with that.
It's possible. I was gonna touch on Josh Palmer because I actually really like him, and he was one of the guys that if he was on my top list and no one's picked him up yet, and I'll talk about this because whatever. I'm not going to hold on to my guys, but he was one I kind of liked, especially with Keenan going down. You didn't see that production, though, in week 1, which is why I think a lot of people dropped out on him and aren't picking him up because he didn't do it when Keenan left last week. Herbert spread the ball around really well. He got everyone involved except – I wouldn't say he got everyone involved. He got the ball to many different people. No one really got involved is the problem. He was kind of spreading it out. I think a majority of those carries or targets without Keenan will go to Mike Williams, will go to Austin Eckler, but I think Josh Palmer is at least exciting enough to add, especially in that high-profile matchup against Kansas City on Thursday night. Which
you're right. I mean, they're 4-point underdogs, and with an over/under of 54.5. You kind of in a Thursday night game that are typically a little more high scoring. You would love exposure to that, and it's like I'm even considering it right now. We don't really have anybody that we want to drop, but that volume is going to be there with Keenan Allen out, and as like a second flex play at worst, a 1-week rental that you can now get for free. Like I would be jumping, and before we log off this, I might have to get some exposure.
I'll keep my eye on the transaction sheet to see if you scoop them up, but. Yeah, I'm surprised Greg didn't, at least with Keenan Allen. You saw him go for Robbie Anderson and Rex Burkhead instead. And for me personally, there's a lot of guys I liked, and there's a lot of guys I still like. I'm only mentioning Josh Palmer because everyone could see that he was picked up and dropped. I'm not going to mention my lower tier guys that are still available on the waiver wire. But for me, I realistically, I didn't see anyone that I liked better than who's on my bench. I think if I dropped any of these guys, they're most likely going to be picked up. And I didn't want them on someone else's team just yet. I'm going to hold on to them, lay off the waiver wire. I don't mind it, too. You still got 16 weeks left of fantasy football, so I'll keep my $100 budget. You will, too. You kept yours, and we'll move forward. Eventually, there's going to be some plays, and we got half the league right now still holding on to their 100, and another half with a couple dollars gone. So it'll be interesting moving forward to see how that affects things, because we didn't really have the major running back injury yet. Yes, Elijah Mitchell's out, but that wasn't, your clear-cut number 2, like your Chuba Hubbard would be, as you've seen in years past.
Absolutely.
All right, you want to touch on Week 2 preview now?
Yeah, here we go. So, we're gonna when the league hears this, so this will be an early edition of the Fantasy 5 early edition. Still got to be locked in, sent in the group, but if you're new to the podcast. The Fantasy 5, I host it every week. Really, you just go through the 5 different matchups, and you're just picking the outright winner of the 5 matchups. And something that we did last year was new. We were bringing on guests. So Barrera was our secretary. He's pursuing other endeavors. We wish him nothing but the best. But now I'm going to try to handle this with Commissioner's help. We'll be facing Nick in week 2. Push against Josh in week 1. Both went 3-2, split the 2 swing games.
Yep.
So now, without further ado, we will be going through who we like to win in week 2 and why.
So for starters, I think we'll just go through each matchup based on my schedule release that I'll do right now. So the first matchup we'll start with is our Thursday night football game. It's Cactus and it's Josh playing each other. Cactus with a rough start in week 1, Josh with the best start. I like it on Thursday night football. Can the underdog make a little splash? Will Josh just dominate again? These are 2 prolific league owners. Had them both in my A tier list rankings, and they're both former champions. So I like the matchup, even though Cactus struggled in week 1, and I had them complete opposite ends of my power rankings. I think there's a chance here. What do you like in this matchup?
Yeah, so we'll start out. Who I like to win, I like Josh to win, and what we're gonna start doing in this at least segment is we're gonna go over the projections, find the line, and we're gonna take who we like to cover based on the line. And in this one, I like Josh. Kyle doesn't have a second running back in right now. We can presume it'll be Kenneth Gainwell unless he gets somebody else.
Unless he's
Kenneth Gainwell projected 7. Yeah, so we'll take Josh on a -6 line. I think Josh will pull out the win. Russell Wilson against Houston. I think he's going to bounce back big there. I like Courtland Sutton to find the end zone. Mike Williams without Keenan Allen out. You touched on it. I think he's going to be a target hog. And it's just with Justin Jefferson on Monday Night Football. That's going to be exciting. Dallas Goedert Monday Night Football. So he's got some good exposure there.
Yeah.
So Kyle will have to be waiting and sweating that one out. But yeah, so I've touched on. I like Kyle's team. Depends on George Kittle. If George Kittle plays, it would only get worse, in terms of the final result if George Kittle is unable to suit up. So I like Josh in this one and to cover the -6.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with everything you've said so far. I think Josh might win this one a little handily. I think there's a chance he might not even need any production from Justin Jefferson and Dallas Goedert going into Monday night. I love the Pittman and Jacksonville matchup. You just saw Carson Wentz throw for 4 touchdowns and be a top 3 quarterback in fantasy. Not that Matt Ryan's anything special. I just think that means Michael Pittman will get open. Josh and the line -6 here for sure.
Okay.
So
get us to our CBS matchup here.
Yeah, our Sunday 1:00 matchup is going to be your Emmett versus Shijin. Got him in the 1:00 slot. Who do you like here?
So I'm going to go, and a little surprisingly too, right? We had them neck and neck in the power rankings, and this might surprise some people, but and Emmett, when you listen to this, I'm not trying to hate, right? I'm not trying to hate. I don't want to seem like I'm all against you, but I'm going to go with Shijin to win and cover the -8.5 spread that we see right now. So yeah, I like Shijin's matchups a lot. It is very contingent. I put in my notes right here. T. Higgins' health, he did enter the concussion protocol. If he plays, I like this Shijin line. My opinion on the line might change afterward. Might have to take the Emmett points with a Shijin win, should T. Higgins sit. But yeah, he's really important, and really the matchups for Shijin in this one I like a lot better. You get a potential what should be a shootout in Vegas with Kyler Murray going there. He's got Kamara and Mixon. We like a couple guys in Cincinnati at Dallas this week. And then, there's a Detroit matchup, Curtis Samuel, a guy that we were talking about, got crazy usage. And, ESPN's giving the advantage to everybody except Jamar Chase over T. Higgins. So, I don't know if I agree with every one of those, but, I like Emmett to put up a good fight here. I think it'll be a little bit higher than the projection.
Yeah.
I just like Shane to take it probably closer to 10 points if T is fired up. Here we go.
Yeah. Definitely an interesting matchup. Again, no primetime matchup here. I think I like this in our 1:00 slot just because they'll be done on Sunday. There's no one even on the bench that projects into a couple people on the bench that projects into primetime, but I don't see them jumping into the starting lineup. I see this as I'll take Emmett with the points. I don't know who I have as my winner just yet. That's a TBD. Right now, just off the first look, I like Emmett plus 8 or 8.5. I think this matchup will be closer, and I think there's a chance Emmett could pull off a win. I think the matchups are a lot closer than Shijin leading every single one. I like the Rashad Bateman, Lamar Jackson stack against Miami. Miami did just play very well, but that was against Mac Jones. I think Lamar Jackson can run, where Mac Jones couldn't, and he was getting strip sacked and throwing picks, and he was in trouble all day. I don't think Lamar Jackson will have that problem as much. Miami defense is solid, but I like that matchup to connect for a touchdown at least. Again, this is contingent on Najee Harris's health. If Najee Harris is out, and it's going with looks like an Etienne Robinson's matchup against a very good Indy run defense, and I don't know who he puts in the flex looking at that bench. So right now, based on if Najee plays, if T. Higgins plays, if Kamara plays, full strength, this lineup, I like Emmett plus 8.5.
Okay.
All right, our highly touted 425 game is going to be America's Game of the Week. It's you versus Drew. 2 1-0 matchups. The only 1-0 matchup we have this week. How are you feeling?
How about you get us started on here? I don't want to come out firing out of the gate in my own matchup. Why don't you get us started here?
All right, we have Drew minus 2.2 is what ESPN projects. Thank you, Bartis, for setting a lineup so that we could do this, or else it would.
Just for the show, I did it just to let everybody know. Just for the show, for the sake of this segment.
He's ripping it down after, because before we had this in the pre-show, I was looking at it. It was Drew minus 117.5, where I would take Bartis with the points there, I think. But looking at it now, this is probably our closest matchup. ESPN has the odds chance to win at 50-50. It's a minus 2.2, so it's a low spread. You're basically a pick-em. I know you're gonna go with yourself here. I already know that's coming. I'll take. This is tough, especially because looking at it, it comes down to Josh Allen on Monday night for you, and it's gonna be a close one. And I love that. A quarterback on Monday night, you'll probably be down. Whatever you're down. If it's 20-30, you're feeling comfortable. If it's anything more, you need a game from Josh Allen. I like your matchups a little bit better. I won't lie. I think John Taylor can run all over Jacksonville. I like Josh Allen against Tennessee because Daniel Jones wasn't awful in that game, which makes me a little nervous that Josh Allen could be good. I think Pat Mahomes has a shootout. I think your quarterback is a little even. I like at least your running back one in this scenario. I think Gibson could run all over Detroit if they let him loose. I think Mike Evans has a tough matchup against Marshawn Lattimore and the Saints. That is a tough one, but Mahomes to Kelsey could be big. Oh, this is gonna be this is the toughest one I think I'll have to do. Right now, I like to take the points in you, but it's only 2 points. I'll take a Drew winner just to be different right now, but that might change. That could very well change once I dive into this matchup a little bit more. This is a very close matchup. I think it just goes back and forth with, he has a better matchup, you have a better matchup, he has a better matchup, you have a better matchup. I think this is going to be the closest game of the week, and rightfully so at the 425 game of the week slot.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I like all the points that you touched on there. It's definitely the quarterback should both give us at least 30 points. I'm thinking more towards 35 based on their respective matchups. And, yeah, I mean, I think Gibson will run all over Detroit. I mean, even last week he caught 6 or 7 balls for 60 yards. So I got hooked on my rushing prop, worth noting. So extra motivation against him. But yeah, no, this is definitely, in my opinion, the game of the week, not just because I'm in it. We're also the two, I think, highest projected teams. I think we're both going to exceed our projections, and I love that I have Josh Allen Monday Night Madness. I think they're the earlier start. The Vikings are an 8:30 start in Philly. Yeah. But I would love to have struck midnight with Josh Allen last drive. But, we'll see. I mean, we need a Moon Bear bounce back. We'll see the RB2. We'll see how it goes. I mean, if Kenneth Walker is out, we'll most likely start Penny again. I think he looked pretty good. But if not, it's going to be Steven's season with Ty Montgomery hitting the IR. And just Cooper Kupp is just absolutely going to dice me up, too. There's no doubt about it. I'm expecting no less than 25 out of Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
What I think I can get the advantage on is the Pittsburgh guys, going in, and Mitch Trubisky he hasn't even started, I don't think, a season's worth of games in his career. So now he's going to come in and face a Bill Belichick defense. And they are home, but, with Najee banged up and, that offensive line not looking good, he does have a good defense, but with Freiermuth and Deontay, I don't really see much success out of them. And like we talked about before, having two guys, especially pass catchers in the same offense, it's limited. Your ceiling is limited with those two. So I think that could help me sneak out a W. I'm taking myself plus 110 on the money line. Forget the points. Give me the outright winner. Go to 2-0, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see that path. Especially in the range of outcomes. That's what hurts me when I was looking at this matchup is that double stack of Pittsburgh, and I'm not in love with it. I think there's room where one of them has a decent game, but I almost feel like one of them is doomed for an absolute dud. I like your Monday night Josh Allen. That's a very comfortable spot to be in because no matter. I mean, outside of being down anything egregious, if you're within that 40-point range, you have a chance no matter what. Josh Allen's capable of doing that, and especially on a Monday night, get a little madness going.
There's nobody else I'd rather have in my corner, at least this week on Monday Night Football.
Yeah. All right, moving into our Sunday night game. We get championship rematch. Greg and Barrera. Greg 0-1 last week. Touched on that. Barrera 1-0 last week. Barrera's been active. Greg's been active. We got a little bit of a different lineup this week. Out of Greg's corner. Looks like Barrera's rolling out the same thing with the addition of Carson Wentz. But Greg gets a little different lineup. We got Greg right now favored by 2.6 and a 52% chance to win. So almost as close as yours. A little bit higher, barely. But this will be another close matchup in our championship rematch.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking right now at a 2.5 point spread. At first, before Greg spent all the money yesterday, I really liked Barrera's group, and I still do, of course. The running backs I really like a lot, and now he added Carson Wentz with the matchup. I like it better than what Kirk Cousins is about to do, and Kirk Cousins, he wasn't playing in the game in Minnesota when Case Keenum was there in the NFC Championship game before the Eagles ended up routing the Vikings. But, Kirk doesn't really play well in primetime, so I like that he went with Carson Wentz. Given the overall matchups, I mean, really everything stacks up well for Greg. And I think that he will get a comfortable win. He will avoid the 0-2 start. That would be dreadful, 0-2 start. And I think he's going to avoid that. I think Jalen Hurts going to get really active. Eckler's playing in and James Conner really in high total games. And, with Juju looking really good, we'll see. He's got Renfro on the bench now in place of Rex Burkhead, and now Kareem Hunt off of his 2-touchdown game last week is going to get in. I like Greg to win. I'm thinking about 8 to 10 points in our Sunday night game.
Okay. All right. I would take Barrera here. I think Javonte has a massive game. I like Brandon Cooks with what Geno just did to Denver's defense. I think Brandon Cooks is a viable option against them. I think he'll be open, and Davis Mills likes to target him because there's no one else. I like the Detroit matchup in Carson Wentz, and that's where I kind of like it. I think the matchup obviously leans towards Jalen Hurts, but I kind of like Carson Wentz a little better this week. We haven't seen much of Jalen on primetime. I think that matchup will be a little bit closer, and I think it'll actually be a little bit more low scoring, given it's primetime and it's Jalen Hurts and it's Kirk Cousins. And if this was a Sunday 1 o'clock, I would see it being 40-30. But in a primetime matchup, I kind of like this to be a little bit more low scoring in the 20s. You got to throw to your guys. You got to play with your guys. I think Minnesota brought great pressure to Rodgers. I mean, they made him look dazed and confused out there on Sunday. And I think they'll bring a little bit more pressure to Jalen Hurts. And I kind of like that matchup there. Kind of almost leaning Barrera. I think Barrera as a dog always plays well. He's a dog again. I'll take him as a dog to win the championship rematch. But yeah, looking at Greg's flex plays, I think Rex Burkhead is a dud. And I think Kareem Hunt he's not going to get 2 touchdowns every week, or else he'd have 32 touchdowns on the year and break records. I think this is where you step back on those touchdowns. He's coming off a 2-touchdown game, which makes you think, okay, he's going to be used. He's going to be, he's going to get his. And he will. It's the Jets. I think he'll be used again. But I think this is the Chubb touchdown week against the Jets. Give me Barrera and the points. My underdog.
I like it. This is now this week. It seems it's early to tell. Seems like we're gonna get a winner this week in the Fantasy 5, either one way or another.
Yeah, it's starting to lean. I mean, it's easier when I'm listening to your picks, and then I just want to kind of go to the opposite, so it's more fun. It's if we did this separate and just texted it into someone, I think our picks would be a lot closer. And there might only be like 1 or 2 different, because I do agree with a lot of the points you're making. I'll wait to see those finalized lineups on Thursday before making any official picks. But just going off of it, I kind of like to be different, so it's a little bit more fun for the league. A little bit more on the table.
Love it.
And that brings us to our last matchup of the week. It's Monday Night Football, and very telling based on our lineups that it's going to come down to Monday night with Steve and I. 2 0-1 teams. Our only 0-1 versus 0-1 matchup, which means someone's coming out of here at 500. You should start with our matchup because it is me. I'll touch on myself right after. Pause. But you can start us off.
All right, let's get into it here. So yeah, Nick looking right now. It's a 10.5 point favorite. We touched on Steve. Steve is 10 in my power rankings, and you were 4, so we have a little bit of a disparity there.
Yeah.
But of course, just looking at just week 2 alone, got to factor in matchups. And I mean, how exciting is this? This is Monday Night Madness. Yeah, I have a quarterback, but we don't know what it's going to look like at that point. We can assume that your guys' matchup will probably be pretty close because you guys both have some big players coming down in the prime time, right when and it's going to have a lot on the line. Nobody wants to start 0-2. So, we're really going to have to look at that, and it's going to be a fun night in the league watching that one. So, we got Herbert at Kansas City. We love that, right? We love any kind of Herbert exposure. Like we said, your running backs did really well last weekend. We want to see a little bit more pass game involvement for both of them.
Yep.
But Chubb, I mean, he just might go absolutely ballistic against the Jets here. I mean, we'll see. He loves these smash spots. Devontae against Arizona, nobody can contain him. Just nobody can. We'll see how Cole Kmet bounces back. And A.J. Brown, obviously, really solid. On the other side, I mean, I think Joe Burrow is going to be absolutely, completely aggravated. And I think he's just going to come out throwing the ball left and right, finding Chase, finding Higgins if he plays. If not, he's going to go to Tyler Boyd. He's going to have a big game. Derrick Henry, I mean, the Buffalo defense is tough, and he didn't catch any passes last week against the Giants, and it's not going to get any easier on the road at Buffalo. So he's, a big X factor. Stephon Diggs, he will get his, of course. Michael Thomas coming off a 2-touchdown game. Excited to see how he does against the Bucs, a team that he has a lot of experience against. And Steve putting in Cordarrelle Patterson after having him on the bench for the 2-touchdown explosion last week against the Rams, who gave up a lot to the Buffalo Bill offense. It's, the matchups are pretty good on both sides. I mean, I think you definitely have an advantage. So that's leaning me to go with Nick W and a 10.5 point cover to about a 12 to 13 point win.
Wow.
And I think it's going to be real close. This might be a trap game of sorts.
It could
and
be.
I think it's going to be like a backdoor, how Steve was involved on Monday night with Jerry Jeudy breaking his heart after he was, writing home about a 35% of the game through with 0 points.
So for those listening, the Monday night matchup here is there's 2 Monday night games this week in the NFL. If you didn't already know that, we have the 7:15 game. It's Titans at Bills, and the 8:30 normal game is Eagles at Vikings. Oh no, Vikings at Eagles. Sorry. So our matchup really is very even on Monday night as well because it's Dalvin Cook and AJ Brown versus Derrick Henry, Diggs, and then you could throw in Dawson Knox, which I forgot was in his lineup when we touched on it in the pre-show. But it's a very even Monday night spread between Steve and I, which is why I have this in the Monday night game, is because it's certainly coming down to that madness at the end. I strongly believe in my team and my guys, and I believe that we pull out a win here. First look, 10.5. Like, it's tough to be 10.5. I feel like the Niners almost home against the Seahawks this week at 9.5 point underdogs when the Niners just look like shit. Except I didn't look like shit last week. A little bit of a trap game. I don't want to take myself with the points right now. I'd take myself, but Steve with the points because 10.5 is a lot pregame. But I do like my matchups a lot better. I think I don't want to speak myself into, memes coming next Monday night, next Tuesday when I'm going to talk about this from an honest perspective. I like my matchups a lot, though. I think Nick Chubb against the Jets is a smash. I think the Ravens didn't have running backs last week, which is why you didn't. Like, Mike Davis and Kenyon Drake are not Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. I think the Browns are going to run the ball against the Jets. I love the Devontae Marquise Brown matchup just because Arizona's defense looks awful. They had zero pressure, like actually zero pressure on Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs. And if Derek Carr gets some time to throw, it's going to Devontae. And the Cardinals looked awful. So they're going to have to throw. I like them to get Marquise Brown a little bit more involved. He had the touchdown last week. TBD on my secondary flex matchup right now is Allen Robinson. I just left my lineup the same. That's not definitive in my second flex spot just yet. But other than that, I like my Monday night leans a little bit more. I mean, Steve has the entire first game. So really, Steve's game is going to end, and I might have a quarter or two of football left with Dalvin Cook and A.J. Brown still to play, and I like a close matchup there. I hope they get Dalvin a little bit more involved in the passing game. I hope he gets a couple more receptions. I mean, Justin Jefferson was wide open. I don't see that happening again. He should be covered. But Dalvin Cook had 20 carries, and I'm not going to complain with that. Nick Chubb had, like 15. I'm not complaining with that either. My running backs got their usage. I hope I find the end zone a few more times this week. I'll take Steve to cover for right now to protect myself a little bit, but I'll take myself to win.
Okay. I like that. Yeah, definitely fair. I mean, I would love, and I'm sure the rest of the league would, and our new audience, but they would love, probably a Steve lead by a couple points at halftime of that game, of the second game, where Nick needs to scrap it and claw it out, where AJ Brown and Dalvin Cook got to make some plays to get the win.
Yeah.
And they, maybe even if they find the end zone, neither did in the first game, they find the end zone. That would love for it to come down to that.
It's good.
Not for my 11, not for my 10.5 bet, but
it's gonna be nerve wracking just because a 7:15 start versus an 8:30 puts the first game at nearly at halftime when the second game starts. Maybe back half of the second quarter. I'm hoping that game moves quick. I don't think it will, but I'm hoping it moves quick because I'd like that game to be over with as soon as possible. So I really see what I'm gonna need out of Dalvin and AJ Brown come the second half of their game when Buffalo Tennessee's already over. I'm hoping for
a little interesting on the NFL scheduling decision there.
Usually
two games. Usually it's week one, right? You
go
go with one out east, and then you go with one out west
later at night. This is 2 East Coast games on Monday night at 7:15. I don't know. I'm not with the NFL anymore. So I have no idea why they did that. Usually it's a week one thing, and it would have worked out perfectly last week just because the game was in Seattle, which would have been your late game. Even if you do like a 9 o'clock start, 10 o'clock start out west, I don't know. It seemed like this should have been done last week. They're making up for it in week 2, I guess. It's 2 very good games too, which sucks because you kind of want to keep an eye on both. Get your laptops up, get your screens up. It's going to be a wild Monday night. I can already see it.
Oh, I cannot wait. The group chat will definitely be active. We will definitely be having a lot to talk about, on next week's pod, whoever the guest may be.
Yeah. You guys will let us know what you guys thought about this week. and hopefully give us some suggestions on what we can do to improve, and maybe what you'd like to talk about for next week, or what do you want to hear for next week. I love how open this is, how open-ended this podcast is. You know, it could be whatever we want it to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, and thank you for having me on again. And just everybody, thank you for listening. Just make sure you like and subscribe. Stay tuned. Check out our website. If you have not already, Nick will post it in the comments on the YouTube video, but check out the website. Drew did a fantastic job of setting that up. There is a lot of content. We have a schedule posted of what to look out for. And, you know, this is a blast. Like, we love doing this. Like, we're all super engaged in this league. We love this league. So, you know, we have a great time with it. It's just the beginning, you know, just turned September. So we got a whole lot coming, and we're excited to keep putting it out there and staying close to the league we love.
Thank you for being on. Thank you for being a part of it. Thanks for your insight. We touched on week 1. We went over the power rankings. We touched on the waiver wire. We went into our week 2 preview and gave you the schedule and a little early action on our Fantasy 5 that we're going to have this week. Make sure to like and subscribe. Check out the website. Check out the Twitter. You know our socials. You know where to find us. Thanks for watching. That completes episode 3 of Keep Fantasy Great. See you guys next time.
Good luck.
No problem.